Ninon du L'Enclos, a 17th century French author and a courtesan, stated, "The more timidity a lover shows with us, the more it concerns our pride to goad him on. The more respect he has for our resistance, the more respect we demand of him. We would willingly say to you, man, in pity's name, do not suppose us to be so very virtuous. You are forcing us to have too much of it." Sexuality is not merely a physical urge, it is a fundamental aspect of our humanity, intricately tied to our thoughts, desires, and values. Sexuality is a big part in Berserk as a whole, and generally in the lives of humans. It's no coincidence that the word sex makes our ears perk up whenever we hear it. It can be the source of insecurity, the cause of lust, or a way of escaping the insufferable world. For the sake of simplicity, we shall analyze a bit around Griffith's sexual encounter with the princess after Guts left. His first true mistake, which set in motion all that was to come. Griffith had used his body before as a way of dealing with the world. He sold his body to Genon for money. Necessity pushed him towards that decision, for Griffith's mercenary campaigns were costly. His ultimate goal is to win, which he sees as a form of redemption for the fallen comrades. And to win ultimately means to do anything in your power to achieve it. Money, bloodshed, lies and betrayals. It was all in the repertoire of a wicked Machiavellian character such as Griffith. The deep-rooted problem is that one cannot divorce his body from his self-worth and psyche. The prostitution which Griffith did for another man made him disgusted with himself and ashamed of his actions. Sex is deeply personal, and people shouldn't just give it away, lest they want to distort their psyche and divorce the act itself from intimacy and meaning. Guts leaving meant losing grasp and power. Griffith, truly affected in that moment, acted impulsively. Lo and behold, the rational man who devalued his body in the past now succumbs to its urges and his psychological insecurity, to which prostitution for Genon most probably contributed. Griffith once again uses his body as a tool, this time not in submission for the sake of a rational goal, but in dominance because of an emotional outburst. Sex is an outlet for him. It doesn't take long for Griffith to make the decision of going to Charlotte. If you think about your own sexual urges and the behaviors that come with it, you could understand the struggle of Griffith. Nowadays, one might say that he was down bad, and so down was Griffith that he didn't consider the danger of treason or losing his dream as a consequence of uncalculated actions. The Hawk as a whole is mentally scarred from the rough and difficult experiences he has had to endure. It is neediness, discomfort with himself, and a self-dislike that sends him into the quarters of the princess. It is the arrow of Cupid that creates a pain and leads to the need of another human being and an emotional and sexual connection with them. Although Griffith needed Charlotte, and Charlotte liked Griffith, his only thought was to forget. He asks her if she's afraid, then states to cast those feelings in the fire. That statement was more of a self-diagnosis than a verbal communication with someone. Also, during the sexual act, Griffith is preoccupied with flashbacks from the departure of Guts and his words. Interestingly enough, Griffith's bold but irrational decision enlarged the fire of love by Charlotte for Griffith. Ninon du L'Enclos, a 17th century French author and a courtesan, stated, "The more timidity a lover shows with us, the more it concerns our pride to goad him on. The more respect he has for our resistance, the more respect we demand of him. We would willingly say to you, man, in pity's name, do not suppose us to be so very virtuous. You are forcing us to have too much of it." The princess becomes even more infatuated with the leader of mercenaries. In Robert Greene's book The Art of Seduction, he compares the development to the symbol of the summer storm. He writes, "The hot days follow one another, with no end in sight. The earth is parched and dry. Then there comes a stillness in the air, thick and oppressive, the calm before the storm. Suddenly, gusts of wind arrive, and the flashes of lightning, exciting and frightening. Allowing no time to react or run for shelter, the rain comes, and brings with it a sense of a release. At last." While Griffith, during his mental disorder and chaotic thought process, uses his body as a way to escape reality, though unsuccessfully done, Princess Charlotte, a virgin and in love with the hawk, finds the encounter and affair in her bedroom ever so sexually and emotionally stimulating, intensifying her adoration for her lover. Griffith was caught right after the treasonous act and was thrown into a dungeon. The King of Midland found the deed of the once trusted mercenary commander utterly inadmissive and insolent. His troubled mind as a king of a warring state is again reflected in his sexuality, as in other characters. Disturbed and peculiar bond to his daughter Charlotte was developed over time, as he kept her locked away from all suitors as if all to himself, and found her to be the only pleasant thing in his life. There is a connection between the king's first wife and their daughter, because he compares Charlotte's developed physical features to those of her deceased mother. He sickly holds onto something gone and dead, an image of his love, which is represented in his child. Here again, it is clear how tightly the mind and sensuality are tied. Often, a turbulence in the psyche and unconfronted feelings boil up under the surface and result in immoral and strange actions towards people of the other sex and or those of the same. It is apparent how deeply to heart the king took the trespassing, so to say, of Griffith into the sexuality of Charlotte, which the king so heavily guarded, as he puts him in the darkest dungeon and tasks the excellent torturer to keep him alive for as long as possible and make him suffer. Sexuality is not an easy quality to overlook, since it is an important part of living creatures for survival and reproduction. Thus, it can be a defining part in one's character, and as a consequence, it is crucial to understand what drives our sexual desires, and what might ignite them to an extreme degree. Overlooked, and it can cause a grave mistake in the future, such as that of Griffith and the King of Midland.